What's up, guys? This is Pedro from My Stuttering Life, where you will hear the good, the bad, the very ugly. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna cry, but through it all, just know that you are not alone. So, let's get started. Welcome to Tyler Kastelberg.
Hey, Pedro, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, sir. This is a huge honor. We have a lot of topics to cover, so let's get started.
Outstanding. Let's do it.
So, do you remember when you first began to stutter?
That's a great question. I remember when I first realized that I had a stutter. And that was when I was in the first grade and I was called on to read out loud in class. And everyone else had just read out loud. And for some reason, the words they weren't all being they weren't all sort of coming out as I was trying, to say them. And so, I apparently, when I speak to my parents about it, I had a stutter for a much longer period of time. I think I recall having speech therapy before I realized that I had a stutter, which is interesting. So I would go to a speech therapist in Virginia, and I'd be in there. I was probably under 5 years old, and I didn't have any idea why I was in this office. And we were just having conversations, and I just didn't understand why I was there. But yeah, it was really around the first grade that I realized that I have a stutter.
Does it run in your family? Are there any other family members who stutter?
Yeah, I have an uncle who has a stutter on my on my on my father's end of the family. Um, Outside of him, Uncle Jimmy, I don't have any others who have a stutter. Um, I have a sister who has a stutter as well though, but her stutter, we're not sure if it's she has other sort of brain processing issues, and so we're not sure if the stutter is because of the genetic predisposition or if it's other causes.
You were talking about going to speech therapy before you even knew that you were in speech therapy, and I mean, you were a minute for how long?
So I was in speech therapy in and out of my life. And so before I was 5 years old or in that early childhood, I had a little bit of speech therapy. And then I remember a brief period of time in elementary school that I was going to see someone in school. But then I really didn't have proper speech therapy until I was in high school, where I spent 2 years, I think my junior and my senior year of high school. Might have even started my sophomore year now that I'm kind of thinking about it. But I went to see a person in Richmond, Virginia, who I started out on a more intensive program in which I was seeing her 2 times per week. And then over time, as I improved and improved control over my speech, it would be every other week, and then eventually it was just kind of monthly check-ins. But yeah, and then within the past year, I went at the end of high school. I pretty much had complete control over my fluency, and that was a really cool experience. And then it was interesting in in undergrad. It was pretty good, and then as you enter entering kind of like working, it just started to get, I would trip here and there and be like, oh, I haven't tripped on, R words in a while, or like, and then it ended up getting kind of worse and worse and worse until this past year I decided, you know what, I need to, hop into another, another, another period of therapy. And I ended up tripping over, I'm not sure if you've heard of this, the the MPI2 program. Have you ever heard of that, Pedro?
N- no, I have not.
Yeah, so the MPI2 is a program that's out of UC, out of UC, out, out, out of, out of UC, uh, Santa Barbara, and it's kind of early. There's a few practitioners of it, but the whole premise is that if you can um, have I guess like um, a longer, a, um, a longer uh, uh, phonation interval, then it helps you to control. Then it helps to prevent instances in which you trip over words. And so I think it's a very interesting program. It has helped a whole lot. There's still, a lot of practice, a lot of opportunity there. However, yeah, I've been really pleased with the program.
So I have a question because I've had a a couple of guests who were in an intensive therapy program. Like, I mean, it was every day, for a couple of weeks. And that proved, to them extremely beneficial. Is the MPI2, is it a intensive daily therapy, or I mean, or um h- what is the duration of that program?
Yeah, so the program is designed to be a intensive program. I sh I sh I sh 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 stretched it out over time. Um, However, it is designed to be a more intensive, I believe. I mean, either if you can sort of pack it into like 4 to 6 months, as I think it's supposed to be, or if you do it over a full year, which is how I've been doing it, you're supposed to practice on a everyday consistent basis.
See, and that is the whole key right there, Tyler. Practice. Any coach, Tyler, they will tell you, if you want to get good at anything in sports, in business, and just in whatever, you need to practice. And Tyler, I've had
Totally.
20 years, Tyler, of speech therapy. So what you are hearing is 20 years of really hard work. Because I mean, I went from zero, I mean, a goose egg, zero f- fluency to 80%. And,
Yeah.
over the, course of 20 years. And um, it's hard work. It is hard work. However, if you want to get good at anything, practice, practice, practice. And so what I do every day is I do my diaphragmatic br- breathing. I do my mindful meditation, and I read one page out loud every day. Every day.
That's stellar.
It it helps me with everything, Tyler. Everything with, stress and chaos and life and work. I mean, as a whole, as a holistic, you know, ap- approach. That's what helps me out. And so what I find intriguing is those programs that are intensive, um to me, and it's only my opinion, the outcomes are higher. The you know s- s- you know s- the s- 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 the success rate, because my therapy, you know started in school, it was, you know once, maybe twice a week. And I mean, if I'm being honest, I
Yeah.
wish it was every day. I wish I had it every day. But back in my day, because I am a lot older than you, Tyler. A lot older. Back in my day, in the late 1970s, um, the schools had a PA. They had one in, each room, and then the whole school would hear from the school counselor that Pedro Peña has speech therapy in the office. And
No.
it's like, "Come on. I already have this, and now you're adding this to." It's like,
That's the worst. Oh,
hold on."
man.
It's like, "Come on." What more, can you pile on to my life? So yeah. But I'm glad that that um you are in the MPI2 program, because to me, speech therapy, it works. However, you have to practice. You have to practice and do the exercises and do the tasks. And because, Tyler, I tried everything, to get rid of my stutter. I don't know if you've heard my other podcast, but I tried voodoo. It didn't work, Tyler. So, don't do voodoo, because, you're just wasting your money. Because, you will try anything. Because, we are a vulnerable population. We are. And when we hear, oh, there is a magic pill. Whoo, where is my Visa? Where is my MasterCard? But, you know, um, there is no cure right now. There is no magic pill. However, there are awesome, awesome therapies out there. And so
Yeah.
I I encourage everybody, you know, you know, go to speech therapy. Not all speech therapists are, you know, are uh, uh, they are alike. Find one that works for you. So yeah. Um. Okay. Let me just go back a little bit. You were talking about reading in school, reading out
Mm.
loud in school. So Tyler, uh, okay, how did you handle that? How did you cope with that? And did you do it? I'm curious.
So that's a great question. Reading out loud in school was always the hardest thing. And it still is. I don't think I've read in front of a group in years. That's just not something that I have a ton of interest in recreating in my life. But yeah, I recall in school that, in English class, it's interesting, right? Because I enjoy, a whole lot of reading. I do a lot of reading. I enjoy kind of research, but I hated English class, and it was purely because of those days, like once a week, in which a teacher hadn't exactly sort of planned out any lesson. It was like, all right, here's how we'll invest our time. It'll be like reading out to the class. And I remember how I'd be kind of sitting in the like center of the room somewhere, and it would start on a corner, and then I could almost sort of count paragraphs into where I would be, and then as it would
Yes.
approach, my 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 just like heart rate, it would just increase, and I'd become just completely internally panicked. On the outside, I think I looked okay, but inside, just completely panicked. And then it would end up on my turn, and I would block like crazy. Could hardly put together any words. I'm not even sure if they ever had me like read the whole thing. And I don't think I ever approached any of my teachers and said, "Hey, I have a stutter, so on these things, can we just kind of like avoid me?" However, there were a few I think almost all my teachers eventually, it would end up over over my turn, and they'd be like, "And we're done for the day." And so like it was just kind of one of those in which they kind of planned, "Hey, it kind of hits on Tyler, and we're done," which honestly I appreciated. However, yeah, that was always really hard, and that's still really hard. Yeah, that was of all the any situation in which I had to I it was almost like if it was in like writing, then I wasn't able to change out any any of the words into an easier word, or any. It's not as if I could really like, change anything on the fly, you know as you do as a sort of coping mechanism. And so yeah, it was pretty brutal.
Okay, now I am even more um curious. In your undergrad and grad school, because I've been there, Tyler. I have my AA degree, I have my bachelor's, I have my master's. Um, so let me ask you an even more larger question. So, as you know, in school, in undergrad and graduate, you know, you have group projects where you have to you know get into groups of 4 or 5, and then you have to do the y you know, presentation, and whatnot. So, were you that person? Because I was that person. Were you that person who told your group members, "Look, I will do everything. I will do I will do everything in PowerPoint. I will do everything in Word. I'll do all the graphs. I'll do all the work if you talk." Were you that person, or was I the only one?
So I'm sure that played into it, a little bit. I was more that person who was like, "All right, guys, I'll introduce us, and then we're done, and I'll pass it over to you guys." And so I'd be like, "Hey, class, here's our group project on industrial processes, and um, I'll pass it over to Jimmy." Like, and then I was out, right? And so that's usually I would still volunteer for a presentation opportunity. Well, it wasn't like everyone had to be a part of the presentation, and so I was still involved in it. However, I was in the smallest part that I possibly can, and all the teachers were like, that's fine. Like, they didn't really care too much.
Yeah, I did all of the work, and so when, they would ask, um, who did what, they all had responded, "We did everything equally." And and, you know, you had mentioned the I word because I wrote it down. See, I am taking notes as you're talking. So
Yeah.
you said intros. You said intros, Tyler. That was my nemesis because,
Mhm.
as you know, in school, on day 1, on the first day of school, you have to get up and give your name and where you're from, da da da, in every single class on the first day of school. So, like what you were talking about earlier, reading, reading out loud, y- you would count to where you were, and then find the corresponding paragraph. And so, to just piggyback, uh, I read out loud one time, Tyler, and that was it. That was it. It was horrible. I blocked, I repeated, and I mean, the kids were laughing. I said, "This ain't never going to happen again." And so every time I had to read out loud, I would raise my hand and go to the boys' restroom.
Mm,
So all through school, undergrad, graduate school, the corporate world. Every time I had to read out loud or do anything, I would go into the restroom. So I hung out in a stall. Okay. Now, heading back into introductions. It happened one time, Tyler. One time. A lot of blocking, a lot of repeating, a lot of sweating, heart hurting, chest hurting, everything hurting. Yeah, it was horrible. And they were laughing, as it because for Pedro, it was about survival. I have
totally.
to I have to survive my school years with having a severe stutter. And so I did it one time, an intro, and so I said, "This ain't never gonna happen again." So, Tyler, I missed the first 2 days of school from grade 1 all the way to grade 12. I did it in undergrad, I did it in graduate school because I knew on day 3, I can just walk in and just have a seat and everything's gonna be fine. You don't forget that type of trauma. You don't. You don't. And so for Pedro, I was like, "No, I need to survive." And this is how I did it. I know we're all different, you know, our journeys are all different. However, we have that same common denominator that we have a stutter. And for Pedro, th- th- this is how I survived 12 years of school and 4 years of undergraduate and 3 years of grad school. And I mean, I know we're all different, but that's how I handled, you know, doing intros and then reading out loud. So yeah.
Mm. I'll just add on to that, like introductions and, either in the jobs I've had or in undergrad, for some reason I got it in a good groove. I think it was after the speech therapy I had in high school and I was really on top of the mountain there. But yeah, elementary school, middle school, high school, introductions were always hard. Um, and then out of undergrad, I remember interviews were a train wreck for me trying to get a job. And I landed a job at GE in a training program. And I remember there's all sorts of stuff in which executives will be, you know, in in office and they offer a presentation to all the undergrads who were just hired, and they would have you do introductions. And I remember, I think I stuck in there for the first 10 times, but then eventually I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom during intros and come right back. And that kind of worked okay. I will say this is this is sort of comical. So so I think I've gotten a bit chippy in my old age, or uh, and, and so I had a situation at GE in which a very high up person had been in the room and had us introducing ourselves, and I get up and I try and introduce myself and I stutter on the T and the K for Tyler Kastelberg, and he asked if if I if I forgot how to say my name, and
Oh.
I and I looked at him and I was like, oh no, I have a impediment, um, and like he went like pale because he knew he was in trouble, and it was
I'm not sure.
hysterical. And then like he came up afterwards and was ultra kind to me and offered to have offered to help like mentor and all these various. And I thought it was hysterical because it was like totally CYA. However, yeah, there like it was really funny, and I think that anytime that happens, and it still is. I was actually, this is horrible, on introductions. I started a business around 4 years ago and hired a sales team because I don't have interest in doing any cold calls. Like that just isn't a thing a stutter has really interest in doing. I don't I don't have interest in it. And so I had a client. I think you know I was I was helping out a person on my team who was kind of like new and had a really like huge opportunity as a client. And I thought, you know what, I'll come in as the owner of the business and help kind of close this deal. And I'm stuttering pretty bad. And the first like intro calls are okay, and then he he um and then I had told him like, hey, I'll reach out to you. He had a few questions, and I said, hey, I'll reach out to you, um, and we can like hash it out over the phone. I try to call him just like 2 minutes later, and I block on my introduction. I say, hey, I'm stuck. He waits 3 or 4 seconds and then hangs up the phone. And then he emails me and he says, hey, it sounds like there is issues on your communication. I'm not interested in your business. And I was like, but how he worded it, it was in a more like asshole-ish way
Mhm.
than that. Um, and I was just like, I had to take a good like hour and a half after that and just like take a nap. I was so tired. And I think I think there's a lot of things in this world that for people who have a stutter, it's just a little bit harder. And I think introductions is just one of those things. And I think what's sort of cool though is you can tell how people respond to it is a huge kind of picture of that person's character.
Oh my God, yes.
And I think in this, I mean, if I'm introducing myself and I am uh, tripping over words, and a person is like, "Hey, did you forget your name?" It as I correct them, how they respond is a really huge indicator of like who they are. If they're like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry." I'm 100% okay with that. I get it. There aren't a whole lot of people who you encounter every day who have a stutter. However, if you're an ass about it, then like I don't want anything to do with you. I have too much other stuff to do to deal with that. So, anyways, I don't know how we got there. However, yeah, that's a
Oh, no.
very
It's all good. I mean,
introducing ourselves is very real. Yeah.
oh, yeah, because I mean, Tyler, I mean, I can't tell you how many people, have hung up on me. However, before hanging up on me, they tell me to learn how to talk, and the
What?
and then they hang up on me. And you talk about, you had to take a nap. I took a whole day. I took a whole day. I went home. I turned off all the lights. I mean, I turned off everything. And so I sat in the living room. And I mean, I called myself every name in the book. And I mean, you are 100% correct. We have to work 100 times harder than everybody else. What many people do easily, as in your telephone voicemail, it may take them a minute, maybe half a minute. For Pedro, 53 minutes because I need the first 30 minutes to just breathe. So I'm heavy breathing on the phone. So, yeah, and I mean, and uh, s- h- h- and I mean, you bring up a great point. In that from the time that we wake up until the time that we lay our heads on our pillows, we're exhausted. We are drained mentally, physically, psychologically, because all day long our body is tense. I mean, all day long, because you know, I'm trying not to block. I'm trying not to repeat, and then I'm breathing, and then I'm breathing, and then I'm breathing, and then when I get home, I don't want to talk to nobody, Tyler. Nobody, nobody. I want to just be in complete silence and pray that tomorrow is a better day. So yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
let's go back to school because we were we were talking about
I
school. Okay,
Go ahead.
so did you ever encounter bullies in school because of your stutter? And if you did, how did you handle that?
So if I did, it wasn't ever super serious. I think there potentially was a time that I was bullied, but I don't think I ever really it didn't really impact me too much. I mean, there are kids who make comments and like, I think a part of it is if you're just like, I don't care, then it kind of, ends up taking the power away from them. However, I do recall at the early like middle school, I was at the pool and there was a at our kind of like neighborhood pool in Virginia, and there was an older man there who I think he was in his like 70s or 80s, and he was a Olympian, in, like 60 years prior, and he could do like dives into the pool in just incredibly well, and he was sort of teaching me stuff, and he ended up pulling. He told me early on, he was like, "Hey, a person like you ought to be like working out, uh, because if you aren't like larger, then there's a higher probability of you being kind of picked on as you get older." And I was thinking he was, he kind of highlighted, "Hey, a person like you," because at that time I was out of shape, had like man boobs, like all the above. Um, and I thought he was only commenting on just pure kind of physical things. Could have also been the stutter of like, hey, it's going to be helpful if you get hair bigger. And so early high school, I started working out. I was playing volleyball, um, in a pretty competitive league. Ended up doing a whole lot of travel with that, and almost actually played at undergrad. Um, and in that, I just like bulked up, and so it was so yeah. As I got older, I didn't have anyone at all picking on me, and I think a part of that, it was that I was pretty big, so I don't think anyone was that stupid, but yeah.
Well, I was small, Tyler.
Oh, Pedro.
Hashtag easy target. Hashtag let's get Pedro. And you know, and you know, as we were talking about, speech therapy, in school, back in my day, the main focus was, they wanted me to get like everybody else. Let's get
Mm,
Pedro talking like everyone else in this school. And so, I had it in my head that I was broken, that I was, damaged because I couldn't talk like ev- ev- everybody else. And so, I felt isolated. So the bulk of my school years, first grade all the way to junior in high school, I was mainly all by myself. So,
Mm,
in, grade school, I would eat lunch in the janitor's closet, and, or eat behind the school because, nobody wanted to, hang around the kid who couldn't talk and who would spit and sputter, and whatnot. Um, and I had wished later in life, it, had hit me. Um, I wished that in speech therapy, they focused on the mental health aspect, you know,
so much. Yeah.
how to handle the bullies, how to cope with life's stressors, you know, but now, you know, thankfully now as I talk to speech language pathologists now, they are now doing that, which is awesome. However, in my day, I wish they had that because it would have alleviated a lot of the pain and s- 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 suffering, you know,
Mm,
that we go through with, having a stutter in school. And, you know, um, so in, talking, about that, let me ask you this question. So, do you have any advice for parents, teachers, and speech language pathologists regarding children who stutter?
man, that's a great question. I have a child, I think I mentioned in my pre-interview. I have a child who's almost a year, approaching a year old here pretty soon. And he is, you know, he's just, he is in the process of learning how to talk. And I sort of think, I'm curious if he has a predisposition into stuttering or not. Um, you know, into people who encounter children with a stutter, I think stuttering is hard practically. Okay, I can only speak here for me. It's very hard in your practical situations, introducing yourself in class, trying to read. There is a very huge, huge, huge component to who, if you have a stutter, how you communicate, kind of like internally to yourself. I think that's very important, and I think having encouragement out of other people is very helpful. I also think having a stutter is a quasi like superpower. And because from an early age, like you are facing adversity every day. And every day in which you choose, hey, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to move um, a inch forward on this, or I'm just going to survive today, and I think the adversity that it creates in your life, and as a child having to address that and cope with that every day, it creates a internal strength that I think is unmatched. Um, as I got older, highly competitive person, I think a part of that is because I had a stutter. As I got older, I looked around um, at 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 a GE as I was working there, and I was like, I think in a competition of like building a business, I can beat these people. I think kind of the kind of sort of like fire, it was instilled in me at an early age as a function of my stutter. You know, um, I think for teachers, I was handed an opportunity in the 8th grade that had a really huge impact on my outcome, I think. And I was a part of a group in the middle school that was called peer helpers. I don't know if that's like a thing only in Virginia or everywhere else. And I don't even know the purpose of the organization at this point, but I think you help with like tutoring and that kind of stuff. And I had a teacher, I think it was a guidance counselor, who said, "Hey, I think you should be in charge of this group over the next year. You know, like the president of this group." And I thought to myself, I think hearing a person who's older, who understands me and says, "Hey, I trust you with like leading something," was very, very formative too. And again, I think it kind of like further formed a, um, you know, who I am today. I will say for parents, I think you're, I think it's important to hear your children who have stutters, and I think hearing them isn't just like hearing the like words out of their mouth. I think it's having a lot of patience and understanding kind of what they're trying to say, because children aren't able to process emotions. A lot of adults aren't either, for that matter. That's a whole other topic. But um, children aren't able to process emotions, and it's really helpful if, as a parent, you can hear what they're saying, help them to process the emotions, um, in place of, in place of like rolling over them or anything like that.
See, and that is great advice because, in school, I wish that the speech therapist and the teacher, and my parent, were all a cohesive group, as using a team approach, but, everybody was just, separate. And it's like, is Pedro getting the help that he truly needs? Interesting. All right. So let's jump ahead because, you were talking about job interviews. Whoo! Let me tell you, Tyler, I have crashed and
Bad.
burned, crashed and burned. I had a panic attack in one job interview. I hyperventilated. The interviewer had to give me a paper bag to breathe in. Wasn't hired, but I had to appreciate, you know, the bag. And, there were times when, I would I, I mean, just the worst of the worst. And so what I had learned later in life, just tell them. Just just disclose and tell them because I can't hide this. Come on. I mean, you
No.
know,
Yeah,
there
I hear you.
yeah, I mean, and, there oh gosh, there have been some amazing jobs, Tyler, that I turned down. I had to lie to them because, again, it's called survival in Pedro's world. Um, they would want a telephone interview, a telephone panel interview, Tyler. And oh no, Pedro is not going to put himself through that type of trauma because I already know what's going to happen. And so I can't tell you how many jobs I've had. I lied to the HR manager and told them that I had already accepted another job. And oh, I'm when I tell you that hurts, I mean, you had a nap after that person, hung up on you. I took a couple of days. I took a couple of days because it's like, um, we we talk about, you know, discrimination in the job workplace because of our stutter, but I did self discrimination right off the
Yeah.
bat. I did it. I mean, No one else had to do it. I did it to myself. And so let me, ask you this. How did you handle job interviews with having a stutter?
Oh man, interviews were a train wreck. I remember out of undergrad, I really had interest in a job that was on Wall Street, either a trading role or an IB role, investment banking. And I, did all the proper things in undergrad to be qualified for a role. I then haul up to NYC as a junior and senior and speak to people, try to get into interviews. And Pedro, I had a few interviews, but like you're they were all turned down. I would get in there, could hardly introduce myself or speak. I would always interview, right? Like I didn't ever say, hey, I'm gonna pass on something, but it was one of those things where it was like it was a kind of like futile effort. But and I think an issue too out of undergrad, I don't think you have a whole lot of actual confidence in your abilities in a job because you haven't ever had a job before. And so I think having a lot of confidence, it just makes everything easier. And that's the thing, right? Um, this is an aside. However, I'm an extrovert. You know, on 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 like Friday evenings and in undergrad, out of undergrad, I would go out. I'd be at the bars, with all my friends, and I wouldn't stutter. Introduce myself, telling story. I wouldn't stutter at all. But in a job interview, it was a train wreck. And I think it's a confidence thing. It's a power thing, I think, as well, as you feel like you're in a inferior position in something. Um, However, I will say that after I worked at GE, how I got GE is I was interviewing with someone who has a huge heart. I swear that's the only way I got that job. And I had already I had received a internship there, and I performed pretty well. The interview was full of stutters, but you just kind of, I think I had enough connections into there that they kind of overlooked that, and had a chance. I did well, and then I got a full-time offer. And I remember interviewing to change jobs at GE, and there was a hiring person, HR team member, who if I started in the interview and I was stuttering, I would say, "Hey, I'm gonna pause. I have a stutter." And she said, "That's 100% okay." Our old CEO actually uh, has 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 a stutter as well, and so to hear that was really cool. And I still, like, I won't ever forget that conversation because uh, yeah, her kindness was just outstanding. But then after I worked there for 2 years, I was still interested in a Wall Street job, and so I was applying again. Had some more confidence at that point, and I don't think they were great interviews. However, they were an improvement from before.
See, and I mean, as you are talking, I am just jotting down notes galore because um, you were talking about in undergrad, we don't know, how to job interview. We don't know how to acquire a job, hold onto a job because, we're in college. And so I did what you did. I did my master's internship at the mayor's office, Mayor Lee Brown in Houston, Texas. I did my half year internship in human resources, Tyler. Human resources. And that's
A
a
lot
lot
of
of
talking.
talking. A lot of talking. So I had it in my head. I need to work 10,000 times harder than everybody else. And I did what you did. I mean, I mean, I worked hard every single day for half a year. Um, I I am I am only needed, I think, 500 hours, but I went way over. I went way over. And so
Mm.
I'm at the end of my internship because they had me work in each you know d- department. I worked with police. I worked with firefighters, testing them. I worked in grievances. Oh, the courtroom drama. That's a
Oh man.
whole other podcast, Tyler. So so I'm at the end of that half year. I had received such high marks, and the mayor's office, right after I graduated, offered me the, the job. No job interview. They said, Pedro, we have a job for you. And let me tell you, Tyler, I was like, thank you, Lord, because I don't know. I had no idea how I was going to maneuver, how I was going to navigate a job interview, at the mayor's office. And so I did what you did. I worked extremely harder than anybody else, and then I got in. And then, but you bring up a I mean, I mean, my hand is hurting from jotting down all of your golden nuggets. But you were talking about adversity, and what we go through every day. Well, it's not just every day, Tyler. It's every hour. It's every minute. It's every second of every day, because what a lot of people don't realize, and you and I are in the same boat, it's all about education. If they don't know what a stutter is, I will do everything to help them understand what you know what it is, because what they don't realize, well, um I do this still today. So if I'm having a conversation with a person, I know all of the words that are coming down the pike. And, if there are a couple of words that I know I will have a hard time with, in my head, as I'm still talking to the individual, I am doing mental gymnastics in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm switching out the words, and I'm picking out the most easiest of words. Even though I have a master's degree, I know words this long, but I'm in a conversation. And for Pedro, it's called sur- s- survival mode. And so I'm going to pick out the easiest things to get out, because, I have everything in here and it has to go out to you. So, that, I agree 100%. It it builds in us an inner st- strength. And I, like you, I'm extremely competitive. Ooh, just ask all my friends, all two of them. I'm extremely competitive. So yeah, I completely understand. So let's talk about this new normal. So I don't know how you have been adjusting to this pandemic. I know pre-pandemic, job wise, I was doing great and talking to people, and I'm breathing, I'm just closing, everything is great. And then here comes the pandemic. And then I'm given a webcam and headset. And you will now work from home. It's like, okay. And then as I'm driving home, as we our worst own enemy. I was like,
Mm.
how can I do this? How am I mean, I've never done this webcam job thing. I've done y- y- you know y- YouTube, but that's a whole other issue. This is your job. This is your career. And so I went home and like I always do, Tyler, I sat on the couch in the darkness. How am I going to handle this new normal? And like what you were talking about, you have to practice. So I call up my buddies. I said, "Hey, I need help with Zoom. I need help with Skype. You know, because I now have to do this every day for my career." And so for 2 weeks, I practiced with with my buddies and Thomas. You are hashtag awesome. And so after I got the hang of it, I was okay. So how did you handle, or have you had to do this? Like work from home, webcam, Zoom, and whatnot.
Yeah, so I think I had a little bit of a head start on the pandemic. I started a business 3, 4 years ago, and I haven't ever had a team that was in office. And so I've been doing Zooms and all the meetups the whole time. And so I didn't really have a harsh adjustment period. However, the hard part on the pandemic hasn't been the Zoom and the interactions over the internet. It's been becoming out of practice in other situations. And so I haven't practiced introducing myself in ages, right? I haven't practiced you know, ordering at a coffee shop in ages, right? And I think all those things, when you're doing them every day, they're easier. When you stop and have to restart, that's when it gets hard. I think the other challenge is having an an actual covering over your face is a tricky. It has been a tricky aspect of it for me, at least. Um, it makes it's already hard to control your speech, and you have to be very intentional. I know with me, if I speak at half speed and connect the words, I can almost be 100% fluent. However, you know, if you put an actual covering over me and there's an extra kind of uh, um, um, an extra an extra an extra factor there, it gets a lot trickier. And so I've I've been choosing to work at home instead of out of an office because I don't have interest in trying to figure out how I can, how I can improve my communication with a face mask. It's just a lot easier if you work out of a home office. Um, and so yeah, I think that's been the tricky part, honestly, for me is um, and this like isn't a commentary on the like efficacy of the masks in COVID. It is a commentary on it's just harder if you have a stutter and you're wearing something over your face, you know? Like it's just harder. So
Right.
yeah.
The you know, wearing a mask when I go out, I have a lot of blocks, Tyler. And when I block, either my eyes will close, and so my my mouth has a jerking motion. And
Mm,
with, the masks, when I'm having a block and my eyes close, which I'm still learning. I'm still learning, how to, maintain eye contact. But the other individuals, with whom I am interacting with, they are asking me if if I'm okay. They're
Right.
asking me, "Am I having a seizure?" They're asking me, "Do they need to call for medical attention?" And so that's when okay, no, I just have a stutter. "Oh, okay, okay, da, 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 da."
Right. It's a little more easy to identify it for other people if they can like visually see like you're trying to get words out.
R r r Right. And so, I mean, during this pandemic, I mean, you know restaurants. I mean, I miss going to restaurants and just hanging out and having a good time, and now it's drive-throughs and I've had my issue with drive-throughs. But,
Yeah, definitely.
but I digress. But I progress too. And I mean, it brings up the issue of having a thick skin. And so let me ask you, Tyler, do you think that it is important for people who stutter to have a thick skin?
I haven't really thought through that too much. I will say that I think it's important for all humans to understand emotions that they're feeling. And I think that if um, uh, having having a thick s- 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 skin equals kind of like blocking emotions, I don't think that's necessarily good. Um, However, I think it's a coping mechanism. I mean, I can tell you for me that as stuff happens, I can like package it in a box and then I can put it in my brain somewhere and just like forget it's there kind of thing. Um, and so yeah, I think is it important to have thick skin? I think it's important to process emotions, and I think that if you're kind of like blocking them, that can have some more harm than uh, over time. I think that can have some more harm than be good.
And you bring up a great point on it. It is important to process your emotions because my younger self, I was not able to do that. So I would internalize everything. And so when people would call me stupid or or that, I had mental retardation, I mean, I took all that in, Tyler. I took all that in for years and years and years. And so as you know, after a certain point in time, you tend to believe it. However,
Mm,
later in life, um, what Oprah calls her, her aha moment. I had that when I woke up at 40 years old, and so I said, "I'm done. Enough is enough." I love Pedro. Pedro is hashtag awesome. Pedro just has a stutter. It doesn't define who I am. It's just what I have. And let me tell you, Tyler, I went through all the emotions that morning. I was I had anger, I cried, I laughed. I mean, I went through everything. And then, after after I spoke those words to Tyler, because I had never told myself that I love you. I have never in my entire life had told myself that until I turned 40 years old. And let me tell you, Tyler, after you speak, I mean, because words are powerful. Words are powerful. After I spoke those words out, d- decades of g- guilt and shame and anguish was gone, all gone, all gone. it's like a whole new world had opened up. And that next day, let me tell you, Tyler, I learned to step out of my comfort zone. If I had a win, woo, I did my little happy dance. If I did horrible and failed, I learned from it. And then I had, applied what I had learned to the next time. So in having a thick skin, I mean, there are, there are people out there who will laugh at you and make fun of you. What I have learned is that hurt people hurt people. And
Totally.
and so if you have to laugh at me to make yourself feel better, then that's on you because Pedro is awesome. And let me tell you, Tyler, once I learned that, I mean, confidence. I mean, you talk about confidence, so important because, at 40 years old, that is the day that I had confidence.
Mm,
And whenever I would have a block, it's okay. I'm still confident because I love me some Pedro. It's all good. It's all good. And once I acquired confidence, because I didn't have it. Ooh, for 35 years, Tyler, I did not have any of that. After I had it, I said, I'm not letting go of this. And so every day, you know, um, I would step out of my comfort zone just a little bit and see if I could do this. And then if I did, holy mac and cheese. I thought I could never do that in a million years.
mm,
And guess what? I did it. I do my little happy dance, and then I go on to the next day. And 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 so you, as as an entrepreneur, I know that you can appreciate this. John Maxwell has amazing books out, but one book of his, the laws of the 21 era irrefutable laws of leadership. One of those laws is the law of momentum. So every
mm.
that I stepped out of my comfort zone and had a win, I was building momentum day after day after day. And so I mean, let me tell you, I mean, it would build my confidence. And so now, whew, I mean, I am having the best time of my life at you know, um, 51, you know,
It's
I
so
mean
great.
I mean, life is good. I mean, I still have my bad days and good days, but guess what? I'll stop, I'll breathe, and then I'll move on because Pedro is what? Hashtag awesome.
Yeah, that's outstanding, Pedro. I think I don't know if I have stopped and actually said that I like love you, Tyler. However, I think a thing happened early in high school that was pretty similar to that. And I actually kind of think, as you were saying that, I was like, I think that kind of has to happen on a continuous basis, in your life. You always kind of have to choose that. And it can like atrophy a little bit, I think. And so early high school, like variation of that happened. I recall at the end of eighth grade, I was just like, I want to be cool so bad, you know, and it, in the in like air quotes of what kind of cool is. And I was out of shape. I didn't have all the money, for the clothes that all the cool kids wore. And I stuttered, which I don't think I attributed at that time into being I'm not very cool. However, that was probably a part of it. Or at least I like told myself I'm not cool as a function of that. But then early high school, I don't know there was a thing that just kind of like changed in me, and it was like I am who I am, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm not cool. I'm not a loser. I just am who I am. And I'll tell you what, Pedro, I haven't ever had like so I haven't ever been so like happy. After that change, the happiness level just increased a whole lot, and um, how many kind of friends I had increased a whole lot, and the amount of confidence I had increased a whole lot, and it all kind of like built on itself, right? I remember in undergrad, this is just a extension of that. I don't know, all sort of weird, but on on campus, if I had interacted, with like anybody at least like one time, and then I crossed paths with them on campus, I'd say hello every time. And it was always like, if I was in a rush, I'd sort of wave and say, "Hey Jill, how's it going?" Or "Hey Joe, what's going on?" And it became this like thing in which anytime I'd walk around on a campus of over like 30,000 people, every like 2 minutes I'd be saying like hi to people as I'm walking. And like I always attributed it into being just a like normal human being. You just say hi to people if you see them. But then I had people who kind of like highlighted, like it's a really sort of it's a real unique attribute about you, Tyler, is that you aren't afraid to say hi to people on the football team, or who's like super nerdy in your engineering class. And you treat everyone equally. And I think how that started is that there was a change internally with I was okay with who I am. And I think that just made a huge difference. And so yeah, I'm on the same page with you as like, however, as I say that, I think it's really important, to say that on a consistent basis. And I think especially as an entrepreneur out of San Francisco, you get kind of all caught up in a comparison game, into people like Zuckerberg, right? I have a startup, but it's not Facebook, right? Like, um, and so, anyways, um, I think choosing choosing to be happy and also confident in who you are, I think it is a choice, and I think it's important to do that consistently. And honestly, our conversation is a really awesome, like nudge over to me of like, hey, it's it's another like reminder of I should do that more.
And in in listening to you, talk about that switch, because um uh, uh, I never knew what an affirmation was,
Mm,
until 40 years old. That's when I dove into personal development. Now that Pedro's world has opened up, I don't know anything about Pedro. I know the old Pedro, the angry, the irritated, the frustrated, you know, that's the old Pedro. But I had to learn about the new Pedros. So I read books by John Maxwell and Tony Robbins. Is just phenomenal. Um,
mhm,
you know, Mel Robbins, Les Brown, Jim Rohn. I mean, all those great mod motivational speakers and authors, and so I took 2 years to just learn about who I am. I went to workshops. I spent thousands of dollars, on workshops to just learn who I am, and in that time period, Tyler, I learned I can do anything.
mm,
I can do anything, and that is when I learned about daily affirmations. So every morning, I have a huge mirror in my bathroom. I do my daily affirmations. Okay. I say, Pedro, you're awesome. You're fantastic. Let's go do this. Let's rock it out. And I mean, I kid you not, Tyler, every time that I do that, I get goosebumps. I
That's
get
so cool.
goosebumps. And then I tackle my day. I tackle my day. And you were talking about f- f- your f- friends. Um, I had a guest um half a year ago, and what she told me just blew my mind. It just blew my mind. Um, she was talking about, you know, um, people who stutter. We have a hard time forming fr- 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 friendships. And so when I was in school, you know, as you know, I was isolated. I hung out in the janitor's closet. I had my lunch. I had my breakfast. I was alone. And so I didn't build those skills on how to make a friend. And all through school, I didn't have those skills. And so later in life, um, I I didn't know how to make a friend. I didn't know how to keep a friend. And so when I heard her talking about that, I said, hold up. So that explains a lot about me because I can count on my hands the number of friends that I have, and there are a handful, no pun intended, that I've had for quite a while, but I have to work at it. I have to work at it. And 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 you know, that had never dawned on me, the power of fr- fr- friends. And you were talking about in high school, you know, you were like, "Hey, you know, I'm Tyler and Tyler is awesome." And that's all there is to it. So, I wish I had that when I was in high school, Tyler. I did that at the age of 40, but now, you know, now that I am a little bit older, not just a little bit wiser, not that much, but, I'm just learning, you know, the value of f f f of friends. And so you bring up just a great point to have good people around you is what
Mm.
yeah, trying to, wrap it all up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think, um, yeah, having a community. I mean, honestly, I found as I've gotten older, um, I found the community in my church a lot of times, and so uh, I became I became a I became an actual Christian at the end of undergrad. And then when I was living in Houston out of school, I got plugged into a church. And, those handful of people in my community group, I mean, I've been uber tight with ever since. And then and I moved into San Francisco, and all my closest friends actually came out of our early church community as well. And so I really think that having a sort of um, common like foundation, if you're into crypto, if you're into, if you play a lot of volleyball, I think having an actual um, common kind of foundation is how I've sort of built my community over time.
How cool, and that is what I have done in podcasting. I have some,
Mm,
amazing people like David Hooper from big podcast. Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. I mean, to be a part of a community. Oh, Tyler, ah, it's like, it's like butter. It's
It's like
awesome.
home. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's like home. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so um, have you ever experienced negative self-talk?
I was actually having this conversation with a friend a few days ago, and think I think I for sure have a lot of negative self-talk. Now, it's not only from having a stutter, though at times it can be, but I think all the self-talk that I do that isn't positive um, has an impact on my speech. And so even if I'm thinking like, man, like I think what happens when you start a business is you know, you at least I have at times felt an imposter syndrome, and I think that when you have ne- ne- negative self-talk, it really impacts you. Um, it impacts your stutter a lot too. And so, yeah, I for sure have fallen in that trap, and it's a thing that I am currently in the process of working on more because and I really hadn't identified it till within I mean, honestly, Pedro, within the past 3 or 4 weeks. And so, yeah, it's a very real thing.
Well, let me tell you, Tyler, I had mine for 35 years. For 35 years. And so, uh, again, I go back, on that morning of when I turned the big 4-0, I named mine Oscar. I called him Oscar, Oscar the Grouch. And so, back in my school days, he would pop up like every day, you know. It's like, "Oh, Pedro, you can't talk, so don't do it." You
Mm,
you know that you cannot talk on the telephone, and so why do it? And so once I gave it a name and called him Oscar, Oscar the Grouch, when he would pop up, I would shut him down. I would tell him to
mm,
hush, but in my Texas drawl way. We are a PG podcast. And so I would shut him down the Pedro way, and then he would go away. You know, plus when I would do the thing that he had popped in my head and told me that I could not do, when I did it, there goes another win. And then here comes another happy dance. And so once I gave him a name,
mm,
I took back control. I took
mm,
back the power. And so when he pops up, and believe me, he still pops up. He still pops up. I tell him to hush and that I am going to do this because I know that I can do this. If I have a hiccup, oh well, guess what? Life goes on. Life goes on. I'm going to stop. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to carry on. And so, I mean, because I mean, for Tyler, he ran my life for 35 years. He
wow.
ran it. He was in control. And fear, w- w- once you add that to the mix, I was doomed, Tyler. I was doomed for 35 years until, you know what? I took back control. I took back the power. I said, no, I'm in charge now. I'm in charge. So you hush up, but I mean, that voice is extremely, extremely powerful. However, once I learned to hush him, to just, tell him to go away, that told me that I can do this. I can do this. And so, I mean, yeah, I had him for over 35 years. So
Wow. And
exhausting.
Pedro, it is. I want to praise you real quick, like to have that voice and to have a stutter and then be like, I'm going to start a podcast, which is all about speaking. Um, I mean, talk about courage and like how much. I mean, I hate podcasts, FYI, in between us. And I've done a few podcasts recently in which I was interviewed for like real estate stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I just cringe when I hear it, and like I trip over stuff here and there, and um, anyways, just the courage that you have in saying like, hey, this is kind of me, and I'm, you know, I think it is easy to be like, hey, I'm okay with who I am. I'm not going to put it on blast, right? However, I have this. I I I just respect you a whole lot for um, having the courage to say, "Hey, I have a stutter, and there's a whole lot of people out there who are sort of like me, and like I I want to help out our community, and here's how I can do that." You know, and like putting yourself on the internet every 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 month is just so encouraging.
W- Thank you very much for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So Tyler, let me tell you, when I was in grade school, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one in the entire world that was not able to talk like everybody else. And so here is the kicker, Tyler. I didn't meet another person who stuttered until in my 20s. Until in my 20s, I did not meet another person who
Wow.
stuttered, and it was by random on a sidewalk, being courteous. And so his hand went out, my hand went out, and we were shaking hands, but no words were coming out. Nothing was coming out. And I could see, oh my gosh, it's so powerful. Ooh. I still get goosebumps. I could see in his eyes the pain. I could see in his eyes the frustration. And it was so powerful. The only words that I could utter is, "I know." And oh my gosh.
Oh man, I'd be a mess.
Woo.
Just
And I mean,
tears.
and um yeah, that was a extremely p- powerful day, and we ended up hugging because I'm a hugger from Texas, and I mean we just you know g- um became good friends from that point on. And so now f- to you know to podcasting. When I had the idea to have this podcast, because I had Googled, you know, how many podcasts are there by people who stutter for people who stutter, and there were only 6
Wow.
in the entire world of hundreds of thousands of podcasts. And so I thought, well, let me try this. And oh, Tyler, let me tell you, ooh, those negative people, ooh, they were just popping in and out. Pedro,
Were they?
yes, it's like, no, you can't do that. Nobody wants to hear a person who cannot talk on the radio. Nobody wants to hear heavy breathing. Well, hold on. There might be some people who want to hear heavy breathing, but no, that's not my target audience.
You're not their audience, right? Yeah. That's
That's a
funny.
whole other podcast. And so I told them, watch me, watch me. And so I did. what I always do. I dove in and learned. I took some podcasting, courses from Dave uh, Jackson, the School of Podcasting, and then from David Hooper. I learned from him, and it's like, no, I am, I am doing this, and I get asked a lot of interesting questions, like Pedro, do, do, do do you edit out the stuttering?
Kind of defeats the purpose.
It's like the name of my podcast is my stuttering life. So the only things that I take out are the dogs barking, if the, neighbor is, mowing his lawn, you know, th- that's all I take out. What you
Yeah,
hear is what you hear. Because what I want is I want to let everybody, every person who stutters around the globe to know that they are not alone and that we are a community. We're here to
totally.
help each other, support each other, lift each other up. Because what I have been telling everybody is that the people who stutter, we are creative. We are resilient. Because I have been
Mm,
knocked down, Tyler. Ooh, I've been knocked down hundreds of times. I still get back up, and we are resourceful. Okay,
hmm.
and so that's um, what I tell everybody. And through this podcast, I mean, I'm heard in 58 countries. How cool is that? And it's like, I mean, woo, I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have this platform. And the best part, I mean, is that I've had guests who who have started their own stuttering podcast,
Oh, so cool.
from being on my podcast, and they are just fantastic, and their podcast is growing, and I'm just so proud. I'm so proud.
So cool. Have
So,
you ever thought about advertising on your podcast? Some of my
um,
curiosity.
I have not.
Okay,
However,
it'd be cool
I am
retirement. You know?
I am open. Yes.
Yeah.
I am open. I am in the final legs of writing my book,
Mm,
b based on my podcast. And I'm hoping down the road, to have, T-shirts and, and tote bags and whatnot. So yeah, it's down the road.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I was just kind of wondering. I think you have a really, really cool audience, and I think that um, yeah, I don't think like monetizing an audience is ever like have to. I was just more thinking like, hey, if you're tired of your full-time job, it could be kind of cool, but you know, you never know.
It's all good. It's all good. I don't know if you know what I do, but I am a national trainer. I train. I teach. I teach.
I was
And
unaware.
and Tyler, let me tell you, I had a lot of people tell me when when this, job came open, they're like, "You can't do that. You can't talk." It's like, "No. I'm going to do this." And I mean, I beat out a lot of, awesome people, and so now I teach, and I found the joy of teaching.
Mm, so cool.
Tyler, I never knew how joyous it was to teach, and, via Zoom. So so let me tell you my icebreaker, 'cause, it works every time, works every time. And so when I hit, the webcam, and they're all there, a lot of them, Tyler, a lot of them. And when I say, "Hi, good morning. I'm Pedro Peña. I do have a speech impediment, so I have a stutter. So if at any time I get hung up on any word, give me 8 hours, and the word will come out. But if you know what I'm trying to say, help you, because I believe that teamwork makes the dream work."
Oh, cool.
And let me tell you, in all those webcams that they have big smiles and they're going like this. I'm like, yes. And then I hit my training. And so, I mean, it's just awesome. I love to teach. I love to teach. So
No, that's an awesome job. Yeah.
it's all good. Now, here is a hot topic. Okay. We have, a couple of hot topics, but here is the first hot topic. So it's also a head scratcher. So, I might ask all of my guests, and the responses are split. So let me ask you, Tyler. So when you are alone, can you speak without stuttering?
Yeah, 100%. I can speak without stuttering. I can read without stuttering. Yeah. Well, if I do not have an audience at all. So if I'm in my room and there's not anyone else here, but I'm on Zoom, I still stutter. But if it's only me, no, 100% fluent.
See, that's interesting. I am your opposite. When I'm alone,
Really?
and talking out loud, I still block. I still repeat. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we're all different.
No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Super
it's
interesting.
interesting. Um, so here is a deep question.
I love these.
For a lot of people, it's controversial. I mean, whoo, it's heated on both ends. So when I ask all my guests, responses are split right down the middle. So let me ask you this, Tyler. Do you consider stuttering a disability?
That is, I'm kind of speechless because okay, I'll answer. I do believe it is a disability. However, I don't think it is a crippling disability. Like it isn't. It's like I don't feel like I am necessary. It's. I think it is a disability. I personally haven't ever tried to like leverage anything with either like work or kind of government stuff with it. However, I do believe it is a disability. Yeah.
See, and one of the speech therapists that I had on, he had made a good point regarding the levels of severity, and
Totally.
you know that will also have an impact, you know you know with that. So yeah, okay, so thank you for that. Here is another hot topic. Okay, now I know you're married, but let me just ask you this. So
Go ahead.
dating, as you were dating, in the dating realm, dating is hard for everybody. But if you have a stutter, holy mac and cheese, it's like a million times more difficult. How did you navigate dating with having a stutter?
Great question. And I hope you guys hope you don't end up hating me over this, but I don't know what it was, but I was always pretty confident with girls. And so like always, hardly stuttered if ever on first impression. Like I feel like if they were like prettier, I was even like I I I I had like more control over my speech. It was like I don't know what it was. I know I
I
don't know.
understand.
It just kind of worked out. However, I will say that I always had, I don't know, I'm just kind of wired this way, but I was like, if I am asking out a person over the phone, then it has to be over the actual phone. It can't be over text. In like hindsight, hey guys, I am okay if you text, ask someone out. Like I think I think that's 100% cool and okay. I don't know why, but I was like, no, I want to call. And so I remember as I was calling as I was calling as I was calling Jessica in order to ask her out, who I married 2 years later. I remember I called her and I was just like praying. I was like, please go to voicemail, please go to voicemail, please go to voicemail, because 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 I knew I'd be introducing myself and I'd be asking her out. And over the phone, it's a whole lot easier if I could try it over and over and over again. Um, if you press like the star or the pound and then like a 2 or something, you can
Yes.
try again. And so you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
And
over
so I
and
remember
over.
yeah, so I remember I'd hear like ding and I'd be like, hi Jess, this is oh all right, I have to have to start over. And I do it again. Hey Jess, this is Tyler. Nope, gotta start over. And I think I spent over like 45 minutes as I was trying to ask her out and leave her a message. Um, and however, then on our first like date, I was like totally fluent. And I don't think she had realized I had a stutter until the first few dates. I actually told her on the first date, but I don't think she heard it for quite a while. But anyways, I always had done pretty well in I think confidence with dating, and that ended up like leading to um, having control over my speech. However, I do think like I think a whole lot of the steps kind of like leading up into dating, it was important. Like I was an athlete in high school, and that helped improve overall confidence and stuff. And then I was doing a lot of competitive things in undergrad that just helped with confidence. And even in like hindsight, they're all sort of silly. It just improved the confidence enough in which it made it easier. I think as well, I know like alcohol is a sort of kind of a controversial thing. Um, at the bars, I was totally fluent. However, if I got into a situation in which I had a employer who was at the bar or a person I was interviewing with and I crossed paths with them, train wreck. And so it was either a lubricant into being completely fluent or a path into a train wreck. And so I didn't really have control either time. I was just, I was either just in, you know, I was like 100% kind of fluent, or I didn't have any control at all. And it was an either or sort of thing. So yeah, I hope that kind of paints a picture of it. It was I think dating I was pretty fortunate with.
You bring up I mean, such awesome points. You um you had mentioned earlier in in the interview in that your stutter is is a is a is a superpower. It lets you know, well, it shows you a person's you know trait. And in dating, to me, that is the key because
Mm,
if you're having a block and the other person y'all are on a date, if they are looking up or looking at their watch or looking, how can I exit, you know, that should tell you that that person isn't worthy of your time. And that is the power of your superpower.
Hmm.
And so in dating, if you're having a block, if you're having a repetition and the other person has the good eye contact and they are just there. It's like, woo, woo, I found the one. I found the one. You know, um and you were talking about liquid courage, aka alcohol. So, for Pedro, 2 drinks, Tyler, and I'm good. Not a stutter ever, but it's only 2 drinks, okay? And we would have work dinners, you know corporate work dinners, and so, I knew, okay, so if I have Merlot, 2 glasses, I can answer any question they wanna ask me, and so I would always have M Merlot, water, and bread, and so that way, you because I still had to drive home from Houston, all the way home, you know, so, to have that liquid courage, because I mean, I've had a lot of people say, "Pedro, you don't stutter when you drink. Can you do that like every hour?" I said, "No, that is not a viable option to have me drink every hour. No, I'm sorry." and and in dating, um, the heart wants what it wants. It don't care if you're bald. It don't care if you're bow-legged. It don't I mean, it don't care if you can't talk. I mean, the other the other person who likes you for you, that is awesome, and that is what you hold on to. So,
Yeah, I really think that I think dating is a really uh, cool journey in a person's life. And I don't want to get too kind of meta on it, but um, I think that you know it kind of it forces like vulnerability a little bit. And I think anytime that you are okay with being a little vulnerable, um, I think you end up just learning a lot about yourself. And I think it's really cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed that whole season of my life, and I think marriage is a whole other like level of kind of vulnerability, right? And I think that's been super super cool too.
how cool. Alright, so here is s a high-tech question. So what do you think about all this new technology? You have Google Home, you have Alexa, and then you have Siri. Do you think this new AI technology is hurtful or harmful for people who stutter?
I don't know if it's hurtful or it's harmful, but I think it's just super annoying. you know, like you just get kind of caught up in something. And as I said, if it's only me at home, at times I can do okay with it. I don't really have it set up in my house because it's a little bit too much trouble. The AI isn't great. It's pretty good if you don't have a stutter. If you have a stutter and you trip over stuff, it's just going to frustrate me. So I really don't mess with it too much, to be honest with you, Pedro. But yeah, I don't. I think a lot of people are thinking it's the future of tech and home. I don't think that's the case necessarily. Um, I'm really kind of bullish as a tech person. I know there's this whole push into like metaverse, and I am highly bullish on the crypto scene, which FYI, Pedro, the whole a lot of the premise like behind that is anonymity. And I think what's what it actually allows entrepreneurs who have a stutter to sort of like create something, and you don't have to do all the traditional, presentations and that kind of stuff. And I think that's pretty neat. But all that aside, um, yeah, I think um, there's a huge push into the whole into the whole kind of metaverse thing that is happening right now, and I don't I'm not crazy bullish on that. I think humanity and all of its like flaws is pretty beautiful. Um, and the hope I have is that human interaction and kind of like human to human, uh, um, human to human communication, and that kind of stuff ends up kind of winning out. And so yeah, I'm not hugely bullish on all the audio stuff. I don't really use it too much, but yeah, that's kind of my take.
See, and I am in the same boat. I don't use it. They don't give you ample time to respond. You know, they
Totally
want
agree.
right. They want you to talk in 1 or 2 seconds. I need half an hour to just breathe. And so, yeah, it's frustrating. My vehicle is voice everything, but I just push a button. It's like, I don't wanna be here for half an hour sweating, heart hurting, turn on my no, just push the button. Um, however, I have been a part of 2 collegiate re 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 research studies, and they are building an algorithm to help people who stutter with this new AI technology, and so I think that's kinda cool. But, right now, I don't use it either because it mocks me.
Mm.
It's like it's like, I have had enough of that when I was in school. I don't need it from you, Google or Alexa. What's your attitude?
I
No,
don't understand what you're saying. Please repeat. Yeah, exactly. Um,
like, I'm breathing.
yeah. You know what I will say though, I have used it to practice before, and so I might ask Alexa a question, and if I'm off cadence, if I'm not connecting the words well, it'll sort of kick back, "Hey, that like I don't understand you," so you do it again. And I think if you approach it as practice, perhaps it's not as annoying. But yeah, if I was wanting to order something over Alexa, I wouldn't. I just get on my computer or my phone.
See, and you bring up a great point because many of the responses from my guests, is that they use it to practice because it isn't a real human being, and so, and therefore, they can practice, ordering, or whatnot, so
Yeah, it's a step down from human, so it's a little bit easier. And so, you can then kind of work your way up to ordering over the phone or something.
exactly, exactly. So, what is a ch challenge, speech-wise, that you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
Hmm. So this is one that I think I have been able to overcome. There's a lot that I'm still working on, and that includes introducing myself. It includes if a person asks, asks for my email or for my phone n- number. That's not always easy. However, one speech thing that I feel like I was able to get more control over through practice is having team phone calls in my business, and honestly, having early on doing a lot of sales calls with customers, getting on the phone with them over Zoom. That was one thing that I didn't think I could ever do. And just through pure repetition and kind of forcing yourself to get back on it. I remember, well, this is an example. One thing I do to practice my speech is I live in San Francisco. I will book restaurants in Jacksonville, uh, Jacksonville, Florida, to practice introducing myself on command. And then I'll call them a few days later and cancel the reservations to practice again. Um, and one thing I've found consistently is when I start doing it for the day, the first one is very hard. 2 is a whole lot better. 3, 4, and 5 are very controlled. That's very true on all that in this say is hosting team phone calls for work, having conversations with customers has kind of turned into a non-factor. But early on, it very much was. And so, yeah, just the constant kind of repetition. And I've lost customers, but I think pers- pers- having the perspective that there's a huge amount of people in this world, there's a huge amount of customer opportunity, and you're going to train wreck some, and that's okay. I think that's important.
See, and one thing that I like to tell companies is that you want us on your team. You do. You want a person who stutters on your team because ooh, we are courageous. We are go-getters. We are resilient. I mean, you want us on your team, and we will take your team all the way to the top because we are hard workers. I mean, and you know, we work 1,000 times harder than everybody else, and so many companies that I have worked with, had made a comment that they were extremely pleased on having hired me. I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah, it's so great.
that feels good." It's validation. It's validation. Alright, so here is it's a deep question, and so, uh, again, the answers are split right down the middle. So do you think it's okay to stutter, or is it im important to keep chasing the fluency gods?
Hmm. I think it's 100% okay to stutter. I will always stutter, and I'm so okay with that. Um, I think that I will also always be practicing and trying to improve control, almost like an artist, right? Like you're always kind of honing your craft a little bit. As an entrepreneur, I think I will always be an entrepreneur. If I end up kind of packaging our business and I put it up for sale and I sell it, I'll start something new and I'll learn something different. Um, I think it's 100% okay to stutter. It's also 100% okay to say I don't have it in me, you know, to do any speech therapy or practice. However, I personally am interested in that honing process because I think it kind of makes me, you know, I think you highlighted this earlier, as you have a challenge and you beat it, and then you have another challenge and you beat it, it sort of creates a kind of like flywheel in your life. I kind of see that I a kind of a part of my whole flywheel is practice. It's hopping on this podcast and recognizing that I'm stuttering here and there, and that's 100% okay. And then on a question, I'm gonna easy onset and try to string the words together. And then you'll ask something else, and I'll trip over that, but I'll think, okay, that's okay, and we'll do it again. I think the honing, the practice, it's almost kind of like therapeutic for me, in a weird way, right? And so, anyways, I think, is it okay to stutter? Absolutely. Is it okay to say I'm not interested in therapy? 100% okay. Is it okay to say, hey, I'm interested in therapy and practice, and keep doing that in the perpetuity? That's fine too. I'm pretty, kind of like laissez-faire about it. I don't even know if that's the proper use of that term, laissez-faire, but we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, we'll move on, Tyler. So, all right. So you had touched on this briefly, just pinpoint, but I would like to hear the whole story. So, what has your stutter taught you?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, it's such a huge response. I don't know how to organize it very well. I did have a look at all your questions, ahead of this, but there are a few questions you're just like, I'm not sure how I'm going to answer that, and I'll kind of go with it in the moment. And this is definitely one of them. But you know, I I think it is ultimately kind of, um, taught me how to stand up after I'm knocked down. And I think like that is the in understanding, that how to choose to stand up after you're knocked down. It's not, just the standing, but how to choose that I want to do that. Um, and I think that's invaluable. I also think what's interesting on the stutter is that it's also allowed me to understand understand the emotions I'm feeling about something a hair better. If I'm in a environment and I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm stuttering a lot, that tells me a lot about the environment I'm in. If I'm in an environment having a conversation and I'm totally in control, totally, yeah, in control of my speech, then that also tells me something. And so, I think, but I think the huge one is that from an early age, you end up learning to choose to stand up after you get knocked down. And as you highlighted, Pedro, earlier in the call, like it's not just every day, it's every hour, it's every time you speak, especially in those early days when I didn't have control over my speech whatsoever until the end of high school. I remember now, who do I stutter with? I think the worst are my parents, and my dad especially, and I think there's some trauma there that, um, is really a big kind of driver of that. However, I don't think I would have an ability to put a finger on that unless I had a stutter. And so, anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but twofold is I think it teaches you how to choose to stand up after you're knocked down, and then I think it sort of gives you a situational awareness that potentially you wouldn't have otherwise, and that's kind of cool.
That is extremely cool. I like that answer. Um, so what advice would you give to another person who stutters?
Oh man, I feel completely underqualified to give someone advice. Um, I will, you know, I think I think choosing yourself is the first step. Like choosing, to be okay with yourself is the first step. And so, like prior to kind of grinding on your therapy and stuff, if you're interested in that, I think having as you said, that aha moment at age 40, in the moment I had as I was entering into high school. Um, I think choosing yourself is so important in the journey. And so, if you have a stutter and you're like, I don't know where to start, maybe start there. And also recognizing that like a stutter is extremely kind of situational, as you know, right? And so like I still have situations in which I go into it and I'm crippled. Um, and so if you're in the place of like, I feel like I'm crippled in kind of speaking situations, I'm right there with you. Like, a lot of things are situational, and yeah, I would start with choosing yourself, and then kind of navigate from there where to go.
See, uh, that is great advice. I mean, every day, choose you and choose you because, I mean, my stutter. I mean, there are days, Tyler, everything comes out. Woo! It's like, what is going on? And there are days nothing comes out, nothing. And so on those good days, I've had people tell me, "You're only faking it, to want attention." I'm like, "What? What?" It's
Poor
like,
strategy if that's the case, right?
yeah, it's like, no, I mean, um, for me, I mean, it's random. It's random. There are times when I mean, I can just talk to anybody and order, and it's fantastic. And there are days it's like, no. So yeah. So here is our last question, and it's a doozy. So, Tyler, if you had the opportunity to be on the world stage and to tell the whole world, to give the world insight on stuttering, what message would you convey?
I think a few of the most incredible people in history have had stutters. And I think that's ironic because the tendency of people when they are listening to people with a stutter is to zone out, or, to not really take what they're saying very seriously. But you think of people like Moses in the Old Testament. There's a whole lot of evidence that he had a stutter. You think of individuals like Joe Biden, who's the president of our country. Think of people like Winston Churchill, also, and the King of England. I forget his name, but that's an outstanding movie. Um, I'm sure everyone who's listening to this podcast has seen that movie, but um, highly recommend the King's Speech. Yeah, but I think that there's a there's a tendency to kind of overlook what people who have a stutter are saying. However, I think like leveraging them as a superpower of society isn't necessarily the worst idea if you look at how many of them have been just extremely impactful in others' lives.
How cool. That is a powerful message. And so in that, I wanna, just say, Tyler, just thank you, thank you, thank you. I think you were hashtag awesome. You are inspirational. And you had mentioned therapeutic in our talk. And so what I believe is that there's healing in sharing. And s s so I wanna thank you for sharing your journey with me today.
Yeah, I was in the middle of our call today, Pedro. I was just thinking this is the coolest thing in the world. And see, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you allowing me on your show.
How cool. Well, thank you, sir. And so you are an entrepreneur, and that's huge. Tell us, your, company name is Bullpen?
It is, yeah. And so it's a place in which people in the real estate industry are able are able are, a, are able to meet each other and also hire high quality high quality freelancers on a fractional basis in their business. And so if anyone out there is in the commercial real estate industry and are interested in any extra help on their teams, our business is a place to check out.
How cool. That is awesome. All right. N- n- Now, I have the best listeners all over the world. I'm in 58 countries on 6 continents. I'm still trying to find that one person in Antarctica, and so that way I have all 7 continents. So, you know, let's say they wanted to reach out to you. What would be the best way?
Yeah, so I would think email is probably easiest, and you can reach me at Tyler at 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 a Bullpen uh, 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 .com, and it'll be in the show notes if you didn't catch that.
You took my line. That will be in the show notes for everybody to click on from around the world. You know, you know, and just w- w- one more time, Tyler. I've had the best time talking to you. I think you are awesome. And so, if ever you are back in Houston, let me know. I'll buy you a Starbucks latte mochaccino, whatever.
Thank you, Pedro. I truly appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. I hope you have an awesome day. Take care, be well, and stay safe.
All right, bye-bye.
If you like this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening, and we will talk again.